we all good? Ready? All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Emma Peterson. I am a member of the Reinvestigation Work Group. We are a volunteer small investigative team here in the state of Minnesota that re-examines cases of police killings. I'm also with the Minnesota Justice Coalition. We're here today to talk about the ongoing trial, federal civil jury trial over the case of Cordale Handy, who was shot and killed by the St. Paul Police Department. I'm going to first introduce Jonathan McClellan, who is the president of the Minnesota Justice Coalition.
Good morning. My name is Jonathan McClellan, president of the Minnesota Justice Coalition. We are part of a collective of organizations that work with families and community to draft and advance legislation and other policy initiatives at the Capitol here in St. Paul and in Washington, D.C. I want to continue to uplift the Handy family who should not have to be here. The tragic death of Cordale Handy, a black man, on March 15, 2017, at the hands of two white St. Paul police officers during a mental health crisis response has raised serious concerns about systemic issues of racial inequity, law enforcement practices, and the treatment of individuals in crisis. Despite the horrific circumstances, no officer was charged in Cordale's death. However, in July 2023, a civil jury found Officer Nathaniel Younce civilly liable for the death, a monumental step in the pursuit of justice. The jury determined that the officer's conduct was willful, recklessly indifferent, and malicious, and overcame a defense of qualified immunity. The case of Cordale Handy has brought to light critical questions about the intersection of race and policing, the treatment of individuals with mental health crises, and the urgent need for reform. In response, a jury initially awarded $1.5 million in punitive damages and $10 million to the family. However, Judge David Doty, appointed by Ronald Reagan and now 95 years old, later reduced this award, known as a remitter. No amount of money, as Kim Handy Jones has rightly stated, can replace the loss of her son, and the judge's actions call into question the value of black life in the eyes of the law. Judge Doty's decision represents a dangerous precedent and a slippery slope undermining the work of the jury and reinforcing harmful racial inequities that persist in our justice system. The initial jury was able to see the racism and the lies, the disrespect from the city of St. Paul, and now the city has been given a chance to clean up their act and put on a show for Trial 2.0. The injustices faced by black communities, it serves as a call to action for systemic change to ensure that no other family has to endure this pain. I would be remiss if I didn't remind you of when Justin DeMond was killed. The city rushed to pay her family $20 million, but the black and brown folks, we are forced to fight for every inch, as in the case of George Floyd, where it took a movement and the city to burn before the city did what they were supposed to do, which was see the value in a black life as they do in a white life. How much is a child's life worth? If you are like most, you would say your child's life is priceless. No amount of money can make Cordale's family whole. The first jury saw the lies, the disrespect, and came back with a verdict that showed racism was alive, well, and thriving in the city of St. Paul. One example from the first trial was when the city of St. Paul referred to Cordale, a black man, as an it, and frequently called him a lunatic. Similarly, during World War II, when Hitler referred to Jews as numbers instead of a name to take away their humanity and dignity, today there is a new jury who is not as invested as the first jury and will not be exposed to the true beliefs of the city of St. Paul. This undermines the whole purpose of a jury and was an overreach of the judge's power to overturn a lawful verdict. Cordale's story is not isolated. It is part of a broader pattern of systemic injustice in American jurisprudence. The legal system must operate in good faith, upholding the integrity of jury decisions and ensuring that justice is delivered without interference. As we reflect on this case, we are reminded of the invaluable worth of every human life, and we renew our call for systemic change. No other family should have to endure the pain that Ms. Handy Jones continues to face, and no other community member should be denied justice because of the color of their skin. President Franklin D. Roosevelt said, "In these days of difficulty, we Americans everywhere must and shall choose the path of social justice, the path of faith, the path of hope, and the path of love toward our fellow man." Thank you.
Judge David Doty said that the original jury award 2 summers ago shocked the conscience. What shocks the conscience is that the St. Paul police officers Nathaniel Younce and Mikko shot and killed Cordale Handy when he was unarmed, complying with their commands, and in the midst of a nervous breakdown. What shocks the conscience is that at trial 2 summers ago, the City of St. Paul's attorney told a jury that Cordale's life, his humanity, his potential, his family's loss was worth nothing. They didn't even propose a reasonable alternative amount for the jury to consider. What shocks the conscience is that after the jury carefully heard testimony, reviewed evidence, and awarded the family that $10 million in compensatory damages, the City of St. Paul argued that Cordale's life was worth no more than $1 million. What shocks the conscience is that a 94-year-old federal judge decided to strip away the jury's authority, a jury that was uniquely competent, by the court's own words and previous decisions, to assess damages in a wrongful death case. Judge David Doty reduced the $10 million award, claiming that it shocked the conscience that a black man's life could hold that value. By reducing the damages and forcing the family to return to trial, the judge allowed the City of St. Paul to argue for an even lower value, this time without the full story of what happened to Cordale. This undermines the principle that juries are entrusted to determine justice and sends the message that even when juries fulfill their duty, their decisions can be disregarded. Courts have long held that juries are uniquely competent, again, to determine damages in these types of cases, which includes both the tangible losses that we can quantify, but also the immeasurable impact of a life loss. How do you measure that? Historically, courts have been reluctant to do what this judge did to reduce verdicts because a life cannot be measured by dollars alone. What happened here disrespects the jury's work, and it reinforces a pattern where black lives are systematically undervalued in our legal system. It is no coincidence that 47% of those killed by the St. Paul Police Department between 2013 and present day are black, despite black residents making up only 15% of the city's population. This is not just an injustice to Cordale Handy and his family, but it diminishes public trust in the legal system, and it sends a chilling message about whose lives are valued. Let's not forget that monetary damages in civil cases are not simply about money. They are how our legal system attempts to make people whole. This is not about money. This is about how do we make people whole after a loss this way. Settlements in police violence cases reflect our society's acknowledgement of this injustice. Consider this. The Minneapolis Police Department, or the City of Minneapolis, paid $20 million for the killing of Justine Ruzcek. Breonna Taylor's family received $12 million. Andre Hill's family received $10 million. John Pope's family received $7.5 million. Philando Castile's family received nearly $3 million. And George Floyd's family received $27 million. None of these cases went to trial. None of these families were forced to relive the pain in court to prove their loved one's life had value, like this family has. So in this case, the family has fought for years. They presented their case to the jury and accepted what they believed was a fair award, an award that they initially requested to be double. After the judge reversed their decision and offered them 2/3 less than the jury's award, they rejected his offer, and then that judge recused himself. Now the family must start over. This is not justice. So what shocks the conscience is not the jury's award. It is this system's persistent attempts to deny justice. We will not allow Cordale Handy's name to be devalued, and we will not let this fight be forgotten. It is time to hold not only the officers accountable, but also the system that enabled their actions. We demand justice for Cordale Handy and every family impacted by police violence. Up next, we're going to have Toussaint Morrison speak. Toussaint is a local artist and activist and very involved in our community.
Thank you to the press for being here today. This is a very important day. This is a very special day because it's the first day that we ask for justice for Cordale Handy again. This is the same day that Kim Handy has have to relive over and over again. And I can say from my lived experience, when Cordale was alive, he was weighed and measured every single day of his life. The same way when I walked down the Skyway and I was weighed and measured by the security, looking me dead in the eye as I came here. Who am I? Am I a threat? What am I going to do? This is every single waking hour of our lives as people that look like Cordale Handy. I have no doubt that Cordale had the code switch to qualify, dressed to assimilate at certain times, and edit his entire being to not be seen as a threat. This is the way of people that look like Cordale and I in America, not a way that we asked for, but a way that we were born into. We spent our entire lives proving that we are worthy. We spent our entire lives proving that we have value. We spent our entire lives proving that we are humans. And now, in a very twisted and morbid way, Cordale is having to do that same thing from the grave. Through the voice and actions of his mother, of his family, loved ones, and perfect strangers like myself who he never met. And when a jury told you that they felt he was worth something, Judge Doty issued a remitter. Everybody went through the process. Everybody went through the steps that they were asked to do. Everybody did the things that they were told to do. And still, a 94-year-old judge from the Reagan era decided to issue a remitter. Doty said the jury was too passionate and that it shocked the conscience. And him being 94 and from the Reagan era, that should be what explains why he would say something like that. But what shocks the conscience is Mayor Melvin Carter expressing outrage at the number. A mayor who wants to save money and not have fireworks go off on the 4th of July, saying that he wants that budget to go to other things, helping out the city, yet he publicly expresses outrage that a black man would be valued at $10 million. Melvin Carter, the son of a cop. What shocks the conscience is Ramsey County Attorney John Troy, out of nowhere, making a PR statement that $10 million for the life of Cordale Handy was rather high. But how would Troy know that? How would Troy know how to value a black life when he couldn't even get a fiber of justice from a slam dunk case against Geronimo Yanez for killing Philando Castile? How would any of these people know the value of a black life? They sit here and they act like they know what it is, and at the door I get checked by that guy with a Bob Kroll mustache. It's still happening. And nobody in Minnesota wants to talk about it. They want to sit here and act like it's just business as usual. Even with the consent decree looking you down the eye. Metro Transit checks somebody for jaywalking and trying to help somebody out. We got to do court support for people around the city still. This is why we're here. Doing the work that those in the grave cannot. Doing the work Doty, Troy, and Melvin Carter will not. Doing the work Doty, Troy, and Melvin Carter did not expect us to do. A city council member just walked by and went down the escalator looking at us very surprised. They don't know why people are still showing up. The reason is because we have to. You see, Doty, Carter, and Troy not only do not value black lives, they want to go on public record to let you know with the hopes that you'll tag along. People don't make PR statements just because they happen to feel that way. This is propaganda. This is them trying to get you to tag along with the devaluing of Cordale Handy. His mother has taken all the steps. The people have done all the things. The least that can happen right now is people pay attention to the stories that you're going to put out in good faith with the media that's here to tell and continue to tell the story of Cordale Handy. Because at every turn, elected officials and even a judge have tried to devalue him. And right now, today, we are serving as the conduits to say that Cordale has value, that Cordale is worth it. And it's not about a monetary expense. It's about the fact that a judge did not listen to the people. It's about the fact that the people spoke and the Attorney General, John Troy, didn't want to listen. It's the fact that Melvin Carter didn't want to listen. The son of a cop, Ramsey County Attorney John Troy, supported by police unions. Oh my goodness, I wonder why they would say something like that. Tell this story, because today is an important day. Because this is the day that we started again by saying that Cordale Handy matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lynn Handy Carey, the aunt of Cordale Handy.
Hello, and I would like to say thank you guys for coming for keeping Cordale's story alive. Today is an important day, and if I could just take my time for a moment, because it's an emotional time. We heard over and over again about value and its perceived value. Cordale was not an it. Cordale was a human being, and I'm here to put a face on that. He was a human being. Everyone here has something or someone of value close to them. And if I could just take a moment and say, everybody has a cell phone. You think about the range of emotions you go through when you misplace or lose that cell phone, because it has a perceived value to you. Even if you replace it, it's not the same, because the information is not transferring over or whatever the case is. We can't go get another Cordale. Cordale is gone. And the fact that we're here is more trauma to myself and my family. So I want to thank the people who have been supporting us from day one. It's very, very important. And the fact that Judge Doty would put further trauma onto our family by reversing what the jury of his peers did is further tragedy. And when Cordale's life was taken, it wasn't just my sister. It's everything and everybody that loved Cordale that's connected to him. It impacted us. Cordale, most of you guys don't know, Cordale was killed on my daughter's birthday, March 15th. So I will always remember that. So it's going to always be a hole in my heart. I just want you guys to not let his living or his dying be in vain. What Judge Doty did was tragedy, a tragedy to our family, and it just permeates further trauma to our family to have to relive this over and over again. And so when is enough going to be enough that we have to justify? We have to keep fighting over and over again to say, hey, we're human and you can't do this. At some point it has to stop. And I just hope with the new jury that we have today, we'll see through that and rule in our favor. Thank you.
Can you spell your name for us quickly?
Yes.
So we're sure to get that right.
Yes. First name is Valerie. Last name Handy / Carey, Carey. Yeah.
Is there any questions?
Yeah. So how often is it that a judge, I know most of these cases involving police killings are settled without a trial. In the rare instance that they do go to trial, how often or how rare is it that a judge would reduce an award like this?
It's extremely rare. I mean, we're taught that you're supposed to trust the jury. There's a reason why we invest the time that we do in selecting juries and giving each side ways to remove jurors. But once you impanel a jury, they're the ones who are supposed to determine. They look at the facts. They're supposed to determine what is relevant and what's not relevant, and then they come up with a decision. So a judge unilaterally exercising authority to circumvent that jury is uncalled for and rare.
Question for, was it Valerie?
Yes.
Can you just talk to us about how the family's feeling about being here again and sitting through another trial? I imagine it's difficult to hear all these facts played out and be disputed again. Is the family here and?
Yes, the family is here. It's traumatic because you're reliving that event over and over again. The stress of having to sit through comments about him being referred to as an it, have to relive that over and over again when you thought it was done and over with. Now you have to come back and start from the beginning. You have to start from scratch. It's traumatic.
It was a big surprise, I imagine, when
Yes.
Judge Doty reduced the settlement.
And then recused himself.
Not settlement.
You caused injury, you caused harm to our family, then you recuse yourself. So my question to Judge, why did you do that in the first place? If you knew you weren't going to finish this process, then why did you do that? You knew, I can't say that, but I feel that the perception would have been it's going to be more traumatic for our family. Nobody wants to do that. Like I said before, we all have something of value and we don't want to lose it. And the thought of losing that, if you think about the one thing that you value most in this moment, the thought of losing that, how would you feel? And then identify the person who took or robbed you of that, and there's no accountability. This is not about money for us. Understand that. It's not about money. It's about full accountability, and that's what we want. On both ends, full accountability.
I think I heard you say this. Your Kim's.
It's like killing him all over again.
Yes, definitely.
Your Kim's sister, correct?
Yes.
All right, just want to clarify that. It's a little hard to hear.
Yes.
Can anyone talk about the legal aspect? Is this only about damages this time, since liability's already been filed?
Let me say that the first trial, the guilty verdict stands. The officer is guilty of his actions, and this trial here today is to determine the value of Cordale's life. Again.
And are there any restrictions on that amount, or can it be any amount again?
It can be any amount again. So again, we're having to, the family's having to, and the community is having to relive this moment. Again, after a jury already decided and made a decision based on all relevant evidence, all facts, being present for both trials, having heard all the testimony and witnessing what you typically won't see in a jury trial in 2025.
Given that this trial is just over compensatory damages and non-liability, I think you kind of hinted at this a little bit, but this jury will not hear as much about Mr. Handy as the first jury did, correct?
That is correct. That is correct, and that's unfortunate. The other jury saw and heard, and in this trial, which I call trial 2.0, this gives the city of St. Paul to clean up their act, to change their words, to try to seem human for the city. But that's not how they were during the first trial, and the jury saw that, and that's why the verdict was what it was. So again, when I say that this sets us a dangerous precedent, it lets cities know that, hey, if you get a verdict, we'll if we can issue a remitter, and then you can come back and clean up your act and try it out again. And that's not the way that it's supposed to work.
And I also want to add on to what John's saying is that it forces families to have to sing for their supper again. It forces families not only to be re-traumatized, but to have to come out and tell the story, sing for justice, and be weighed and measured the same way that their loved one was before they were killed and after they were killed. So it's everything all over again. And now with a new jury that doesn't know as much as the last one.
One of the questions that I will ask, and you piggybacked on it, you talked about Justine DeMond's case, how her family was awarded $20 million. There wasn't any type of, let's question her family, let's give them a rigor mortis back and forth, what have they. Do you feel there's some type of bias when it comes to that?
Absolutely. I believe that when it comes to race in America and race in the state of Minnesota, that is definitely alive and thriving and breathing over there in those chambers. And the fact that the city can, without a trial, without subjecting the family to any type of anything, they give a settlement to the family, but for black and brown folks, you put us through all kinds of changes, all kinds of ripping scabs open and having to tell the story and prove it, so to speak. And if we're not here to do that, then you'll say something to try to make it go away, as what they tried to do when George Floyd first was murdered. And so this is the reality of what black and brown folks face around the country, and that needs to change.
Did the city move for the remitter, or is that something that Judge Doty just did on his own? That was in response to a motion?
Yeah, the city moved for the remitter, and they originally asked for the award to be reduced to $1 million.
Right, okay.
And also you talked about Mayor Carter. You talked about how he went forward with basically indicating that that's too much money for a black person. What do you feel about that comment that he made? A tomfoolery statement, if you will.
Yeah.
Well, I made comment on that because just after it was announced that it was $10 million, Melvin Carter made a PR statement saying this is a lot of money, but then also further slandering the name of Cordale, saying these police were justified. John Choi did the same thing in releasing a PR statement. Both these people didn't have to say anything. And again, it comes back to what Jonathan was saying. If it looks awful on an international scale like George Floyd, there's going to have to be some payment for damages. They're going to have to give out equally what they feel the resolve may be. And if it's for something like Justine DeMond, where you're upsetting a white neighborhood in southwest Minneapolis, somebody's definitely going to have to pay for that. And if it's for a black man who is considered an it and considered a lunatic and wasn't on camera, however, everybody here can attest that from reading what happened to Cordale, what happened to him, not what he did, what happened to him, that the city of St. Paul lynched this man. And the justice that they don't believe that he's worth $10 million because there's no film that is sparking an international outrage, and there's no entire city or state that's demanding justice. That's just what's being weighed right now. So, of course, Melvin Carter would say something like that, but then at the same time say that he wants to create a budget that's going to, be for the future of St. Paul. However, he's totally okay with killer cops still being on the payroll. So you have to look at the hypocrisy there at what he's saying. So it's no surprise that they would issue a remitter after Melvin Carter said that, and John Choi as well.
And if I can add to that, after the award from the jury at the last trial, we went to the mayor, Melvin Carter, and the city council and tried to get them to work with them to try to develop new policies and procedures for law enforcement, to even offering to forego interest and different types of accrual monetary mechanisms that were in place with that initial award. And they all rejected trying to change the behavior. And so when we talk about this systemic issue, and we talk about, we tried to work with them, the family tried to work with Melvin Carter, the family, and they just rejected it. So what do you do in that moment?
Do you have concerns that Judge Thunheim might issue a similar remitter if the verdict comes back and awarded $10 million again?
It's our hope that this new judge understands the family and the moment and the situation and the law, and that's where this is going to end up, and that he does the right thing based on the facts and the law, and respecting the jury. That's our hope.
When it comes to the law, like you basically indicated that he was found guilty, the officers was found guilty. Despite the fact of that, they still went on paper basically indicating that they support the police officers, if you will. How tomfoolery is that?
I want to correct that. The officer was found liable. He was found civilly liable for a federal constitutional violation of Cordale's rights, as well as for causing his wrongful death. The second part of your question, I'm sorry.
Would you just reiterate on that law, basically, when you talked about he was found liable? But
Right.
is there any type of apology to the family, or just the mayor just got on record basically indicating like he supports his officers' decision?
I'll say as soon as the verdict came out, immediately the city was defiant. Immediately the Ramsey County attorney was defiant. There was no opportunity or no reaching out to the family to try to find some type of was there something wrong? Did we miss something, so to speak? And there wasn't that. There was just an immediate reaction and politics at play.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Listen Media USA. Thank you for listening to what we have to say. Here's what's happening in your neck of the hood.